Hello, my name is John Cornicello, and I want to welcome you to my series of live interactive photo conversations. You can check out the schedule at cornicello.com/conversations for dates and times of upcoming shows. In the near future, we're going to have Robert Butelman, Alan Shapiro, Jack Rosnicki, Rick Friedman, Peter Hurley, and Don Komarechka coming up in March. You can also find links to previous conversations there. Today, my guest is Joe Polillio of AEROJO. Joe's been a commercial photographer in the New York City area for more than 20 years. He's been shooting for lifestyle, people, and food for editorial and advertising clients. Joe has started flying training back in 2015, and he's the owner of AEROJO Drone Productions and a license with the FAA. So please welcome AEROJO Joe Polillio.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. First off, I have to fully disclose that my bio is a little bit of a lie. I've been a commercial photographer for over 30 years, but because I've suffered terrible ageism in this business, I kind of shaved 10 years off my experience. So, but, you know, that's how things go in time, right?
Exactly.
Thanks for having me. I wanted to do as I always do, just give a little presentation of my work. If at any time you guys have any questions, you know, feel free. John, I guess, can get them to me is the best way. And so without further ado, I'll start my presentation. I started back in about 1990 as a commercial photographer. I had a studio in Manhattan shooting fashion, beauty, people, lifestyle, kids. And let me share the screen and share that. Oh, that's the FAA.
Yeah.
That's the FAA's website. Here we go. So that's my my brand logo, AEROJO Drone Productions. Whoops, I am way ahead of myself. Sorry, guys. There we go. All right. So like I said, I started off shooting fashion and beauty for magazines, ad agencies. Avon was a big beauty client of mine. I did a lot of pharma. Perhaps you remember Gloria Gaynor, the disco queen. I Will Survive. Did work with celebrities, some commercial print stuff. Again, lots of pharma, magazines. This guy, this is a couple here, wonderful couple. I've photographed them for many years. The guy, the husband, he's actually a drone pilot. We've done jobs together, so he's multi-talented. A lot of kids, and Toys R Us was a client of mine for about 20 years, and this is kind of where my drone story begins, because I was I had lost Toys R Us about a couple of years before they went out of business. There was a lot of turmoil, a lot of changes. And it culminated around a perfect storm of really bad economy, dramatically changing technology. You know, the economy costs a lot of client loss. And when I spoke earlier of ageism, I used to work with a lot of magazines in New York. They were starting to hire 20-something photo editors, and it was becoming difficult. I was really losing the ability. I felt like I was doing my best work ever, and I was really losing the ability to work with the magazines I worked for, because they were they didn't want to hire people their father's age. It was tough. So I had done a video, a music video of a very talented singer, and there was a climax shot I wanted to do, a 360-degree shot, and I couldn't do it with the budget I had. And a client of mine had another client, Unmanned University, and they were giving a talk on drones. And I was like, sounds interesting. So I went to this talk, and I was hooked. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. What I was trying to do, I was trying to capture back the professionalism that I had in my business, because I'm sure many of you who I'm talking to have the same stories. I was literally losing jobs to not other skilled professionals, but amateurs with iPhones. I can tell you so many stories of how many people I lost jobs to that just had iPhones. And I'm like, I got to get some kind of professionalism back. And I thought drones was a good way to go, that it's an emerging technology. So I took a course with Unmanned University, and a guy who trained me, this guy, Mike Ferguson, extremely talented drone pilot, remote control. He's flew remote control aircraft for 30 years. He trained me, but it wasn't enough. At that time, back in 2015, you had to be a licensed pilot. And so I entered, I had bought a drone, and I immediately entered flight school. And I flew this J3 Piper Cub for 8 months, 2 or 3 times a week, because I had to get my pilot's license at that time in order to fly drones commercially for money. And it's funny, flight school is funny because the first thing the flight instructor tells you is, this is like the most safest thing you'll ever do in your life.
Right.
And then you spend like 90% of flight school learning how not to die, So, but it was a great experience. It made me a better drone pilot. And consequently, what happened was the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, changed the rules so that you only had to take a test to become a commercial drone pilot, which radically changed the industry when that happened. When I first started flying drones, there were a lot of people that I flew for that all of a sudden they didn't have to be a licensed pilot. They could take a test. And immediately this business I got into rapidly started to evolve. And I was like, wow. So, so anyway, it was like the first 3 or 4 years, and it's still changing. It changes with the technology. The drones are getting smaller. Everything's changing. The FAA is coming out with some new regulations the middle of this month. And so, it's just, you're constantly having to keep up with things. But so what I would like to do is just to show you some of my work. I'll start with this is my sample reel. It's mostly cinematic stuff, but you get an idea of some of the stuff that I do. This is motion, and I'm going to show you some still work. So we'll start with this. I hope that quality was okay. It was a little,
looked good.
It looked good. Good.
Yeah.
So this is some of my still work. I happen to be out in California and did this shot of the Rose Bowl, and it turns out the client, the company who designs my website, Rose Bowl Stadium's their client, and they saw this shot and they absolutely loved it and licensed it to put it on the main page, which was really cool. It was because I have so many fond memories of a kid as the Rose Bowl, so that was great. This for the California Tourism Bureau, Lonely Planet, a website that picked up this shot. I like to go out. We vacation in California, and so I was going out there, and early in the morning I'd go out and shoot to build up my portfolio, and as a result, I licensed a bunch of the work that I actually did on my own. Men's Journal. This is the same pier from the opposite angle. Car and Driver licenses. I was out in Utah on a shoot, and I did this horseshoe hairpin turn, which was very cool. This again was in Utah. I went out early one morning before I had to go to the shoot that they were paying me to go to, and I did this. I tell people I love to add or have additional elements in the story. I mean, it's a beautiful scenic, but to have that moving truck in the foreground, now you're telling a story. It's not just a beautiful picture, and that's what I like to try and do with my work.
So on that truck in the foreground, did you remove logos or anything like that, or?
I removed a bunch of cars. There were
Oh,
other
okay.
cars there. I always tell people, us photographers, we're really big liars. But it's all about the image. As I always used to say, when I did traditional film E6 photography, most of the work was done prior to pressing the shutter. And now in digital, as you guys all know, that's like the midway point with photography. There's all the post-production stuff that we never dreamed of doing.
Yeah, I got a question in chat. Are you going to cover the challenges created by the FAA regulations at some point here? Okay.
Yes, gonna
Let's
do
go
that.
on with your piece.
Okay, so this is a shot I did my daughter Rosie out in. We got up really early to go to this beach before anyone got there, and again, I like to have that element of something else in a pretty background to tell a story. I'm doing a series on lakes in New Jersey. I live in Morris County, New Jersey. We have 5 lake communities in my town, and this is one of the lakes in my town. And what happened was Oprah Magazine ended up licensing one of my shots. This is another lake in my town that I was going around doing series. And this shot here was a shot. I was actually commissioned to do this shot by New Jersey Monthly. They send me out every fall with my drone to look for cover possibilities for their autumn issue, and this is what they used. It's what I do. There's so many different directions to go with drones, and when I first started out, I was exploring many different directions, but I ultimately always would go back to what my strengths were, and that was image creating, creating beautiful images. You can do mapping, you can do all different types of, search and rescue. There's a whole broad field to this technology. I do a lot of construction work, time-lapse progression. I have some time-lapse progression. This is a huge target distribution center that's going up near Philadelphia that I go out once a month, and I do drone time-lapse progression of the construction.
Time-lapse, is there a way you can put the drone in the precise same spot again to do things over time? Nice.
Yes, and I'm going to show that. I have a software that I use to do that. Okay. And you'll see that come out. There's 2 types of time-lapse. There's one where I put a drone up there and I do interval shots. I have 20-minute battery time. So I'll go up there for 10 to 20 minutes and it'll just take pictures, boom, boom, boom. And it's like an immediate time lapse. Mm-hmm. Then there's another type of time lapse where I go out to that location and I have a saved mission where I fly to the same point in the sky every 2 weeks or every month. And I build a time lapse over time that way. I do some residential You know, the money is really in the $2 million plus homes or $1 million plus homes. So I have a couple of really nice clients that I do work with. This one client, he's fabulous. He gets these incredible modern homes for me to shoot. And the first home that I actually did for him was this one, which looks black. It's a video. He got this home that he thought it looked like a home that James Bond would live in. So he wanted me to shoot this video, which you'll see, obviously, I go back to my roots as a traditional photographer, shooting stuff from the ground, still in video, but he wanted it to look like and sound like James Bond. So this is what we did. So one of the points of that video is the fact that I'm not just a purely drone photographer. A drone for me is a tripod with propellers. I'm an image content creator, and I've gotten calls for drone work that has led to regular photography work and vice versa. It's just, for me, a drone is another tool in the toolbox. It's an important one, and it's one that's helped me to survive this last year during COVID. And it's also a tool that it's not just like owning another camera lens or something like that, because there are a lot of regulations and things like that involved.
Yeah, we're looking at a black screen right now.
Sorry.
It's okay.
All right, there we go. So anyway, this was a huge estate that I shot, 100-acre estate, and this was the pool that it was built in the 1930s, a phenomenal Art Deco style pool. There was just a pool there, and I kept that shot after I did this job. I didn't know what to do with it, and then after I did that shot in California, my daughter Rosie, I bought an air mattress, put it in the driveway, and had her pose in the driveway and stuck that in the pool. Like again, on its own, it's a nice pool and stuff, but I always like to add another element whenever possible to my work. This is me on the estate. A lot of people think, well, why can't you just launch from one point and fly all over the place, you know? Well, if you're trying to do critical work in close, or you're flying below the tree line, the problem with drones is you have a very limited depth perception. Your depth perception falls off after 50 feet. It starts falling off. So it's always best, when possible, to stay close. Plus, with the FAA regulations, there's something called see and avoid. If a low-flying helicopter comes, you have to be able to see it and you have to be able to avoid it. You always have to yield to manned aircraft the right of way. And if your drone is 2,000 feet away from you, it's much harder to see and avoid. One of the things that people always, there's two questions everyone always asks me when they see me flying. Number one, how much does that thing cost? And number two, how far can that thing fly? And I mean, these things can technically, they can fly for miles and you can still have signal, but you'd never want to fly them as far as they can fly. It's just way too dangerous. And I know you'll see videos on YouTube that people do it, but it's very reckless because you can't see and avoid low flying helicopters if you do something like that. Anyway, I do a lot of commercial properties. This is the Shiseido facility, brand new facility. They hired me to do a beauty shot of this place. And they also hired me to do this, this shot of the roof. It's about 60 or 70 images composited together. And they use this for future planning, like deciding where they're going to put more solar panels or put an HVAC unit or something like that. So sometimes, a lot of times there's multi-purposes to a drone job I may get. This job was not a still shoot, it was a video shoot. But when I did the video, while the drone was there, I took a still shot and they liked it a lot. And they said, but the problem is you're a little too high. And, you know, we hate those AC units on the roof. It's ugly. Can you go back and do something lower? And so I did, but ultimately what I wound up with was a shot from the ground. and, you know, but again, the drone for me is just a tool to an end, you know, and they saw this shot and they flipped out and they had another photographer going to their other three facilities in Texas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, and they canceled them and they sent me. And so, so I went down there and this was with a drone. This was their Tennessee facility. And you can see I'm much lower on this. And to diminish that, all the stuff on the roof. And as you'll notice, I love to shoot around dusk and morning, 10 minutes before sunrise or sunset, and 10 minutes, 15 minutes before and after. This was the gear that I went with. This is down in Texas. Two drones, my ground camera, there's my laptop with some thumbnails that they sent me with. You know, I always travel with two of everything. You never know.
So what do you use to image on the drone?
The drones I fly currently, they have cameras that are made dedicated for those. That I use the DJI drones, and they have dedicated cameras on them that have at least 1-inch sensors. They're very good. I have to sacrifice a little bit because they still aren't as good as my Canons, but they're good enough. You know, they do a pretty good job. The reason why I have this shot in here is because I always tell people, you know, the best drone shots aren't 300 feet up in the air. This is only about 15 feet up in the air. And a lot of stuff, especially commercial properties that I do, I don't go that high. It's just, you know, this is a great perspective for this building. This was a job I did for a client that they did the illustration in here, especially these two buildings that are lit up for the developer. And they had me use Google Earth and go out. They wanted me to shoot from an exact perspective in the sky at 250 feet. They wanted me to shoot. And as you can see, the trails, the streaks on the road, I was shooting at about 2 seconds, I think. The gimbals on these drones that hold the camera steady are amazing. I mean, I've shot 2 to 4 second exposures up in the air with these. That's providing, you know, no wind. And it's impressive how great this technology is. This is a client, a private school, and they they had me do this video. I did the whole video, interviews and all kinds of stuff of this anniversary that they had. And because of COVID, they were going to have a live event, but they couldn't have it. And they were going to have fireworks and everything. And so I said, well, why don't I do a drone shot of, fireworks behind the building? And they're like, you can do that? And I said, yeah, I think I can. I think my special effects guy can do it. But what I always try and do, and I always teach people, I try to give clients more than what I promise. And I did this still shot while I was doing the video, and they absolutely loved it. And they were so happy because they weren't expecting it, And this is the video I did. You probably already saw it in my reel. And I had my special effects guys put the fireworks in the background. And this was a hard shot because I'm flying right in between two trees. And I didn't want the trees in the shot. And so it was, I know I had a limited ability. I have a client, Float 4. They're fantastic, out of Montreal. And you see this is a 400-foot high guitar that it's a guitar-shaped hotel, the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino down in Florida. And the company that hired me, they did the light show on this guitar. Those white strips you see, those are all LEDs. And so they sent me down there to do many things over a 4-day period. But this was one of the things I did for them, this video. So one of the things you might have noticed, the drone movements weren't really vast and great for two reasons. Number one, one reason, there were other drones in the area, and I almost had a collision because there was a couple other production companies there shooting, and one of them, I don't know who was flying the drone, but he was very reckless. And I hate flying at night because remember I told you your depth perception falls off at like 50 feet. At night, it's worse. It's really, in fact, you have to have a special waiver from the FAA to fly at night. It's called a daylight waiver. Figure that one out. Only the government could, come up with a name like that for flying at night, a daylight waiver. But it requires several things that you have to do in order to fly at night. And I think I have it. Yeah, this is a video clip. This is my near collision. Now, that might not look that close to you, that drone going by, but believe me, he was way too close, and he was even closer earlier that I didn't get on a clip, and he was flying from 1,000 feet away at least, and it was bad. I mean, so anyway, there's a lot of things you have to watch for when you fly at night. I do a lot of construction work, as I said, progression. This is a site in New Jersey, huge site. And while they were excavating it, they asked me to do this video. And so this is what I did for them. So they were thrilled with that. And so anyway, when I go out, I always have a list of video moves because I don't always use them all, but there's so much that's going through my mind that I'm thinking of when I'm doing something, especially a video project, that that I like to go out with a set of moves that I try and get. So when I go to tell it, because I do most of my editing, there are sometimes people hire me to shoot footage and then they edit or they send it to their people. But a lot of stuff, I do a lot of video editing on my own.
Yeah,
So
Stephen Johnson just asked how many of the movements are programmed versus how many are by hand.
Well, I would say most of my moves are by hand because I get very impatient with the software. It's almost like by the time you get everything programmed in and you line it all up and all this stuff, you got to change batteries. It's so I've really tried to develop really good flying skills where I can freelance it and do it on my own. But I do program video moves, but most of the moves are free flying on my own. And this is a list of the moves and is a short video of that it describes them.
Nice.
So and these may not be everyone may not use these terms, but these are the terms that I've grown accustomed to. The approach, and I usually do it 2 angles. The pull away, I do those from 2 different angles. There's the lifting shot, or some people call it a reveal. The descend, the orbit, and I'll orbit in both directions. The pass through, they call it nadir. That's an engineering term. You can also call it bird's eye, and the nadir spin. This is a 3-axis move. This is going up, out, and across. Very cinematic. Looking for special features. If there's a driveway or an entryway, I try and follow up that. Sometimes that helps approach. And ground, I always mix in ground. Oh yeah, important. Stay out of the damn shot. That's hard because sometimes when you're shooting and it's bright out and you can't, you're flying close to a building with glass, sometimes you have to stop and you have to download the image to make sure that you're not in the stupid shot. You know what I mean? It can be a real pain in the ass sometimes, and sometimes it's really bright outside. And but I use the Crystal Sky monitors by DJI. They're 4 times brighter than an iPad. I used to fly with iPads, and I would get headaches in the bright sun because it was such a strain. And the Crystal Skies are worth the investment because they're very bright. So anyway, here's a couple of quick slides.
Yeah, before we get into the
Yes.
FAA, though, I had a question coming to me. How do you set up your exposures, especially at night? Or is that something you'll cover later?
Oh, no, exposures, I live and die by the histogram, For me, the histogram is the light meter that we used to use for strobes. And the monitor is the Polaroids that we used to take. The Polaroids look great, but depending on the temperature or whatever, you could never really trust what they were telling you exposure wise. Same with the monitor. So the histogram is how I always determine my exposure, and for at night too. The histogram helps a lot. These are essentials. If you do it commercially, you fly for money. You have to be. I know that's a weird word, certificated. But you have to be FAA certified or certificated. You have to have aviation insurance. Each drone, it's like a auto policy. Like if you have 5 drones, your rate will be almost 5 times higher than if you have 1. Every time you add a drone on your policy, and it's an aviation insurance specialized company, so it can get expensive. That's why I don't own too many drones, because I'm the only one operating. So I try and keep it to 2 or 3 drones that I own at any one time. Proper equipment for this purposes, it's good photography equipment. Other people get into other types of work, crop dusting or whatever. Compliance with Faa and local regs. Before we went live, I was talking to my contact at the FAA today, and she was telling me that LaGuardia and JFK, they've been issuing COAs for them, certificates of authorization to fly in those airspaces. And I have authorization to fly in those airspaces, but the city of New York doesn't allow drone photography in all 5 boroughs. But the FAA controls the airspace, but you have to launch from somewhere. So there's sometimes to do a job, there's a lot of research involved in if you can fly in that area. VLOS means visual line of sight. For most drone operators, you have to see the drone at all times. You can only operate in the daylight unless you have a daylight waiver, which lets you operate at night. You can only go a certain speed and a certain height. Typically 400 feet above ground level, typically. Considerations, local weather conditions, temperature, precipitation, and wind. Wind is a big one. A lot of people don't consider, I'll get calls from clients like, we could have shot today, what happened? And I'm like, yeah, but there's 30-mile-an-hour winds, I typically, if the winds are above 15 miles an hour, even though my drone can handle it, if I have to shoot video, it's tough. It's tough to get smooth video moves in strong. If they're steady, it's one thing. If they're gusting, it's a nightmare. Local airspace, flight restrictions. Sometimes a head of state will come into town, or and they have a TFR, which is a temporary flight restriction, which you cannot fly within like a 50-mile radius of where that person is. And a lot of drones, the software will even jam. You won't even be able to launch if you wanted to, which can be a problem sometimes, because I've had jobs where I was flying inside a factory and I was within a TFR and I had to postpone the job because I couldn't even launch inside the factory. Permission, I always want to make sure wherever I launch, it's cool, that I'm not invading on anyone's privacy or their property. Location of people and property. This is changing. The FAA is coming out with flying over people. There's going to be some new regulations. Right now, it's illegal to fly over anybody unless they're involved in the flight crew, like me, or if I have an assistant, a visual observer. And ground hazards. I hate I've grown to hate telephone wires. But anyway, this is a typical map that you might see on the FAA's Argus site. If you see this green grid and you see all these zeros in these boxes and 100, 200, that's Newark airspace. And that shows you, the first thing I do, I ask a very personal question when someone calls me, a total stranger calls me. I ask them, can you tell me the exact address where you want me to go? And sometimes people are like, they don't know what to make of that. But what I do while I'm on the phone with them is I have to check the airspace. I have to make sure, in regular photography, someone calls you for a job, that's not the first thing you ask. But the first thing I ask is, where is it? Where exactly? I need to look it up on the air map to see if I can go there right away, if I need an authorization, if I can't fly there at all. This is just a window of my construction progression that I do. This is the DJI. You see the histogram in the bottom. In the lower right, you see the map. There's a lot of information here. When you first start flying drones, it can be overwhelming. And I always tell people, go out in a big field, and they do have a learning mode on a lot of drones, and just fly a lot. Keep it close to you. Don't go more than 50 feet away from yourself, because all this information you see up here, it can overwhelm you. When you just got information overload. The most important one is in the upper right there. That's 79%. That's the battery level. That one, you really want to keep an eye on that one. And these John, you'd mentioned earlier about software. This is a software called Lychee, and you can program missions. You see those little blue triangles with the purple bubbles?
Mhm.
Those are waypoints. Those are waypoints that I set in the sky and save that mission, and I can fly to that point every time I go back. Now, with most drones that don't have a special GPS, there's about a 6-foot variation, but it gets you pretty close. And you can fly back. This is what I use to go back to sites and fly in the same point. And again, this is this is that software.
What's the name of that software again?
It's a weird name. I think it's somewhere in Europe, like Scandinavia or something. LITCHI. And actually, the website is called flylychee.com. And it's better. I like it better than DJI software because you can save the missions. I use both. But for the progression, I use the Lychee because I can save my missions. And they have a desktop version where you can plan your missions at home. Here's one of my first time-lapse videos. That one I didn't finish all the way. The contractor didn't want to pay for the last visit, so I wanted to do a beautiful shot at dusk with the lights on in the building, and he's like, "Nah, it looks great." Which, you know, sometimes that's what you end up with. This is that site I showed you in Linden, New Jersey. That I go out and I shoot about 20 points every 2 weeks, and these color markings, they're all the areas that I photograph the different buildings going on out there. So this was an initial map that the client sent me, and I went out and I set up my missions based on what he showed me here. And this is one of the points. This was a bridge they were building. And
All
again,
those all those
it's
tanks
still
look
not
familiar.
finished. Yes.
I grew up in Linden and Elizabeth.
So you're used to those tanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that one's not finished. I'm hoping to finish that when the weather gets good.
Yeah.
This is me out on that site, and you see I'm very, this was new to me. When, as a traditional photographer, it was just my name, my portfolio, maybe my website. Now branding is, I find very important in this business, to be well branded. And I've actually gotten jobs off of my hard hat.
So Melissa was asking, have you had clients request work in an area that you can't get permission for, and how do you handle that?
Oh, all the time. No, I shouldn't say all the time. When I first started shooting, I used to turn down at least 50% of my jobs because they were either areas I couldn't fly, illegal, like Manhattan. I've literally had people on the phone screaming at me, "I own the property. There's no reason why you can't." I'm like, please. And I'm like, call the police, ask them. All right, I'm gonna call. But if they say yes, you're gonna come. Yes, I'll do it. They never call back. Or they ask me to do something that's like unrealistic, like something you see in a Star Wars movie, or like flying down a chimney or something like that. It's gotten better. When I first started, it was because it's an emerging technology, and yeah, sadly, I do turn down work because anytime you put something in the air, it's a risk, and you can hurt or kill somebody. And so even with a small drone, last thing, this construction site is right next to an approach for Linden Airport.
Mhm.
And there's low flying helicopters in and out of there all the time. The last thing I want to do is take a freaking helicopter out of the sky. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors that you need to consider in doing this, for sure.
Yeah, John was asking, what models of drone do you use that give you the quality you require?
So I started shooting the Inspires by DJI, and more and more I've been moving most of my work to the Phantom. Most of the work you see on here is with the Phantom 4 Pro. It has a 1-inch sensor, and by DJI, it has a 1-inch sensor. I've literally, for clients, done 4 by 7 foot size prints with this drone. It's the one you see in the photo right now, and it's, you know, it does remarkable video. I like it better than the Mavics for video, because it's got a mechanical shutter, which is a little better for shooting video than what the Mavics have. So and this drone's been around a while. It's, you know, they keep talking about, you know, a new version, but they haven't come out with one yet. So and then if there's something, I used to do 2-person stuff. A lot of that 2-person work where you have a drone operator and a camera operator, a lot of that work disappeared because when they changed to making you know, qualification, just taking a test as opposed to being a pilot, a licensed, you know, flying real airplanes, a lot of that work went in-house to in-house production companies. So, but if I get something like that, that guy you saw with the surfboard, Martin, we fly together with an Inspire 2 for that, if and when I get that work. So this, you know, I mentioned earlier, I just put this in here. This is post, you know, this is what the shot looks like at capture, raw. I shoot everything raw, and this is what it looks like. I added in a sky. I thought it'd be nice to put in a sky that kind of matched the stadium, and as I mentioned earlier, Rose Bowl licensed it for their website.
So Michael
And
Mueller
then-
is asking a question though,
Yes.
in the areas that are restricting the drones, can you hire a real helicopter?
Yes, in fact, that site that I went to, and I offer that to clients. I work with a helicopter company here in New Jersey, and that site I go to in Linden, we're probably going to go in April in a helicopter, because I can't get the altitude that I need for the shot. That they're looking for a shot of the overall site, and at 400 feet, I can see the whole site, but it's too low. So I need to be up about 1,000 feet. So I'll go up with a helicopter and I'll shoot. I'll do work from a helicopter. And that's part, you know, but every time someone calls for a drone job, it's like, there's a lot of questions you have to ask, you know, because it's not like, hey, I got this portrait that I need you to shoot for so-and-so. You know, the questions aren't as in-depth as they are for drone work. You got to ask about airspace, you know, what they're looking for, and decide, you know, can you even get it with a drone? I turn down work because sometimes I tell people what you're looking for, you really need a helicopter. And so there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of questions you have to ask. So promotion, this is a biggie. When I first, you know, as a commercial photographer, and most of you know who've done this, you kind of know who's out there. Art directors, photo editors, creative directors, art buyers, and you can find who they are, where they work for, what campaigns they work for, and you can promote to them, right? With drones, it's different. I don't know who the hell needs a drone. I really don't. I mean, when I first started, I promoted myself to all my clients, that my traditional photography clients, and I get work with them, some of them. But then 90% of the work that I get, I would have never thought talk about a needle in a haystack. So what my strategy was to be found, that I needed people to find me. So I promote and advertise on all these platforms: Yelp, Bing Ads, Google AdWords, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and in conjunction with that, I built. I didn't build it. I had someone build, because the website I initially built sucked. It was I was going nowhere, right? And you know how it is. It's all about SEO, search engine optimization. And I hired a company that I said, I need to land, when someone searches drone photography near me or something like that, I need my website to be on the first page. Boom. And in conjunction with building a website and the SEO that would allow that, I also pay advertise. Google AdWords is a very good platform for me to advertise. And basically what you do is you set up ads, and then you have to set up keywords that people will search for you, like drone, commercial drone services, or drone photography near me, or, drone photography, New Jersey, whatever. And then you also set up negative keywords. Like if someone does a search and they have the word best in it, I know they're not looking for me, not because my work sucks, but because I know when they search best, they're looking to buy a drone. So I have best as a negative keyword, because every time someone clicks on my ad, it costs me. It used to cost me 10 cents a click. Now it costs me $5 to $10 a click. So it requires a lot of work and research and trial and error to get a good list of keywords and a good list of negative keywords, because you can blow through your budget very easily if this isn't managed properly. But this is where, I have found, between that and my website, where I get found and where people find me.
So
And
Stephen Johnson is asking, do you have a direct measure that Google AdWords has brought you income?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, do you have a direct measure that Google AdWords has brought you work and paid work?
Oh yeah, because people will call me, and I'll ask them, hey, how'd you find me? And they'll say Google AdWords. I've even gotten work from Yelp, Bing, not as much, but I've gotten, and surprisingly not as much as Facebook or LinkedIn. I don't have the LinkedIn. I get work from LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a good one too. And you can pay people to do this. You can either learn, which is a very, I got to be honest with you, it's a very steep learning curve. I spent a lot of time on this, or you can just pay someone to do it. But you can typically pay $500 to $1,000 a month for somebody to do this for you, on top of whatever you set for an ad budget. So sometimes it pays to, learn this yourself. And so anyway, so that's and the next thing I wanted to tell you was branding. One of the things that my webmaster told me was, you have to have a brand, because my name was all across all platforms in different things. So we came up with AEROJO Drone Productions, and you see, I did this search. I put in AEROJO Drone Productions, and you see how it comes up. If you look on Facebook, you're going to see it's on Twitter, Yelp. That my ad was up there, Instagram, MapQuest. You want to have that name across every platform, so that there's no, because there can be a lot of confusion. There can be a lot of mistake with that. So that's how I do it. And if you have more questions, I'd be happy to entertain
Yeah,
them.
another one from Michael was, you use the term licensing. Does that mean a stock agency, or do you do your own licensing?
I do my own licensing. Now, I used to be with Getty, but Getty unfortunately dropped rights managed, and they're only royalty free. And a friend of mine decided to stay with Getty and put her images in royalty free. And you know what Getty did? They put them all in premium access, which pays you even less than royalty free. And they didn't and they didn't tell her they were going to do that. So basically now, and sadly, I think correct me if I'm wrong, you guys might know better than me, but whatever Getty does, a lot of other people follow. So we're facing a real dark time in licensing images with this move by Getty, moving everything to royalty free.
Yeah, so if people want to ask questions, you can unmute and speak up.
Yeah, I do. First off, well, number one, you definitely convinced me that I'm not going to go into drone photography because I'm not going to reach your level of competence. And I don't need another way to try to find out how to have fun. Next, where do you see the future of drone photography going? And where do you see the next level of technology in drone photography going?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, Ian, first I'd say if you're a photographer, if you can figure out a way that takes your love and your passion for photography, you know, to 20 to 100 feet off the ground, by all means, go ahead and do it. You know, don't ever let anybody intimidate you if you think that it's something you can do. You know, I encourage everybody, because you may do something that nobody else would do. But as to where it's going, boy, it's so hard to predict, because I spent so much time and money when I first got into this, into flight school, into applying for a 333 exemption, all this regulatory stuff, and then it changing. And then, like, you know, I was gonna invest. I kept thinking, I gotta invest and go bigger with the drones, because I'm a professional. I want to do, you know, the professional stuff. And, you know, this friend of mine who sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's like, no, you have to go smaller. You have to go smaller. So it seems like when you have to go bigger, the technology goes smaller. It literally changes every 6 months to a year. And it's hard. It's really hard to say.
Do you see your client base changing in the future? Do you think it's going to broaden or get more specific into certain places?
You know, I see people calling me. I have 3 potential new clients in areas that I haven't done yet. Pipeline stuff. Just people want me to go out and fly a couple mile pipeline to make sure everything's okay. So there's always new stuff coming. One of the discouraging things is I was getting a lot of work with engineers when I first started, doing certain stuff for engineers. But when the regulations changed, all the engineers, you know, they're smart guys. They went and they took the test and they bought their own drone. So some stuff is going to go away and new stuff is going to emerge. And it's really just being out there and me being present on the web to meet that.
Michael wants to ask a question. He's about ready to explode if he doesn't ask his question.
Hi, Michael.
You know, when I had my studio in Manhattan, like others in this group, we all were confronted with art directors, creative directors that sat and watched us do what we do for hours, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, you know, with an ongoing. And then all of a sudden, when the agencies changed and became boutiques, and the art directors and the creative directors were sort of let go, they figured out that what the hell do I have to hire him for when I can do it myself? And it became another channel of profit for that art director, the new boutique shop, and everything else. So nothing has really changed, except that in terms of the stock houses, I really believe that we photographers screwed up, and we allowed what's taken place over the many decades to happen, where, we used to get, when I was with the stock houses, and I said, to hell with it, getting 15 cents to license an image, 25 cents, $1.50.
Yeah.
That's so you're right in the sense that you have to take back your creativity. Okay.
Yes.
Next, in terms of your branding, have you ever thought about just using www.drone.photo?
I was really stupid with branding. I was very late to it. Part of it was when I first started out, drone was like, dronephoto.com. And when I first started out, it would have been similar to like asshole.com. Drones had a really
but you know
bad...
how much money? Do you know how much money proctologists make?
There you go. But my point is, drones had that name drone had such a negative connotation, and in many ways it still does. I mean, I started out calling myself aerial drone. I tried to avoid that name drone because it had such a negative you see some company out there, unmanned aerial system, productions, whatever. It wasn't until somebody told me, listen, you got to have drone in your name. You got it. That's what people identify with. And I was late to the game on that because it was such a stigma, and it still is. I still get questions. Sometimes I'm flying and I'm doing a job, and sometimes I get people coming out, are you taking pictures of my windows? And it's like, no, I'm doing a job, So, but branding, I was late. I was late to the game on it.
But in order to do the branding, you have to. There's an old military expression called KISS.
Yeah.
KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And I don't even know if you can get it now, but there's websites where you can check out if the name that you want to use is being used.
Yes.
Drone.photo or drone.photos, because the suffixes have increased exponentially.
Yeah. No, a lot of that stuff has been gobbled up. But I'm just, part of it is just also providing that content. I try to post twice a week on social media and across the platform to keep things current. One little thing that I learned from a person at Google My Biz, the Google business page.
Right.
A guy told me, you have to put something there every week, because Google has a way of seeing how active your business account is. And if you're not doing something every week, you drop in the rankings. And I've been a real stickler in getting people to give me reviews, because reviews help. It's not one thing. You know how it is. It's a million things that accumulate together.
And how much does it cost you to listen to that guy from Google?
Nothing.
Free?
Nothing. Yeah,
but you're part of the business thing. Doesn't the business thing cost you money?
Well, I got to be honest with you. The Google AdWords people, it's really good to learn and become savvy at this yourself, because the Google will see that I've gotten so good at my advertising that I'm not hitting my budget, and I know I have my optimization right if I'm not. if I'm below it, but they don't like that. So they'll call me and ask me, you know, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And sure, let's try it. And then I see my ad budget go up without
Let me
any
let
return.
let me ask one important question at this point.
Sure.
Do you have some sort of in the advertising business, we used to call it a tag phrase, a tag name. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I just go by AEROJO Drone Productions
Because if you put in
my-
that tag name in
Yeah.
Google, just Google, all right, and your tag phrase is working, you'll be on the first page.
No,
Yes. No,
I'll
I
jump
yeah.
in real quick.
John,
I
yeah.
use one. I use one that works out real well. Mine is Michael Nuller without the grief.
John, Miss Kelly, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a slight delay in my line, so it always hesitates. This is maybe a bit of a sort of beginner's question for Joe in terms of I'm a professional landscape photographer, and I've been thinking for quite some time about using the drone to particularly do mountain shots, which are more difficult to access. And wind is obviously a major issue there. What's the sort of typical wind speed you can actually operate your drone in that sort of environment? I know you talked about the difference between a steady wind and gusting wind.
Yeah. Well, typically, I mean, I've operated in, I'd say 18-mile-an-hour winds. When I see things forecasted 18 or above, I try to avoid it because, I mean, if I'm out in a big open area, it's fine, but in tight quarters, it can be brutal. When I first started out, it was in my reel in the beginning. There's a shot of a white SUV going on an elevated highway that I did for Autodesk, and the winds were swirling everywhere that day, and I had power lines behind me. Well, that shot was fine because I was in a big open area, but I had to do this other shot. It was a lifting shot of a guy looking at a vacant lot with VR glasses on, and to get that lifting shot, there were power lines behind me. He was in front of me. It was just a nightmare, and so it really, I know I'm not answering your question because it really comes down to experience. You want to get a drone that can handle the winds that you're going to be flying out in, and like I said, if it's over 12, 15 miles an hour, it's really hard shooting smooth video if it's gusty and coming in different directions. The Phantoms, I think they rate them in 21 or 25 mile an hour winds. I know people who've flown them in those winds, but there's one thing about flying and operating a drone in that wind. There's another where you're shooting something, where you're looking down at your monitor, you're looking up where the drone is, you're looking down at the monitor, you're trying to avoid that tree, you're trying to avoid that building. Does that make sense?
He's got a little delay there.
Yeah.
And John, you're in the UK, correct?
I'm in Northern Ireland actually, yeah. So I'm the Irish contingent today.
Yes. I got a buddy of mine in Southern Ireland. He wants to.
All right. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll probably be shooting in the Alps and places like that, hopefully in due course. So it'll be quite open areas. But the problem with that is you tend to get a lot of uplifts and eddies and problems like that as well, which are more challenging. So it's trying to get the right drone that's going to cope with a reasonable level of wind, because a windless day in the mountains is quite a rare thing, as you well know.
Some drones also have high altitude props. They're fatter props because the air is thinner if you go up really high. And that there's a shot of two motorcycles coming down a windy road in the Angeles Mountains in California. And I had some concerns about the winds. I had concerns about crashing and causing a major freaking wildfire in California with the batteries, but everything worked out, thank God. But one question people have is, if I'm flying on a mountain and I have a 400-foot limit, if I fly over a cliff and I'm a couple thousand feet up in the air, is my drone going to nosedive to the ground to get to 400 feet? And the answer is no, because the drone takes the altitude reading from the transmitter. So it's based on, so you may fly out over a mountain and you may go down and you look on your screen and you see you're negative 100 feet because there's a barometer in the transmitter. So I always tell people, don't worry if you're flying in a high place like that.
Right.
So
That's
another
very
question. Go ahead, John.
I was just saying that's very helpful. Thanks for that, Joe.
Good.
Sure. And
Us.
you know, John, if any of you have any questions, you know, you can always feel free to email me. I'd be happy to
Oh,
answer anything.
got one more question coming in here from Stephen M. Would you recommend the DJI Mavics under 250 grams for still photographers making fine art? Are there restrictions for these drones too limiting to be worthwhile? Would a license be required?
Ah, good question. Because I'm thinking of buying one myself, and because I'm intrigued about you know, if I just go away on vacation and I don't want to pack, you know, my stuff, how good the quality is. I hear the Mavic Mini 2, the quality is excellent. And I have a contact at the FAA because, you know, when you read the regulations or you read something that comes out in the FAA, it's like this extremely convoluted legalese. So I'm not that bright. So I like to have a human voice I can talk to. And I must say, the FAA, out of all the government agencies I've ever dealt with, they're wonderful. And they're people who love flying, love aviation. So I've had a few people I call at the FAA over the years that have all been wonderful and very helpful. And I just happened to talk to this woman this morning there, and I said, look, I'm thinking of buying the Mavic Mini 2 because it's very small, and I'm thinking of maybe using it for flying inside when I have some real estate gigs or whatever. And I said, what about regulations? Because you don't technically have to register it with the FAA because it's under the weight limit. And she said, yeah, but you still have to follow all regulations because it's an aircraft. If it's defined as an aircraft, you have to follow the regulations. And if you make money at what you do with it, technically, you're supposed to have your Part 107 certificate. You're supposed to have. Now, fine art's tricky because it's tricky and it isn't. Fine art, you can just be doing it for the love of the art. Technically, once you go to sell that print, you're doing drone work for commerce. So the FAA says yes, you have to be certified.
But if you're not making a profit, how does that figure into it?
I don't think a profit's required. As
You
long
said
as
profit.
I know a lot of professional photographers who make no money.
Okay.
Have you not had any inquiries or looked into the entertainment business, motion pictures and so forth for drone work?
Yeah, the guy who trained me, this guy, Mike Ferguson, is like the most amazing remote control pilot I've ever seen in my life. In fact, part of why I got into it is I wanted to do what he does. He flies $70,000 drones with $150,000 red cameras mounted on them. I mean, he's amazing. His flying skills are amazing, but that's what he is. He is a pilot. He always has a camera operator with him. But what happened for me was I was starting to get that work, but when the regulations changed, it was almost like you were either in or you were outside. And once you were outside, it became much more difficult to get in that, because a lot of the cameramen who work on those production companies became drone pilots, and they, using their own.
Oh, well, we're about 20 minutes over the hour. Let's see, Melissa's saying I will look at the FAA website when we're done, but wondering if I got the Mavic Mini 2 to get some behind the scenes photos during my senior portrait sessions, is it worth whatever it takes to be licensed?
Well, to get licensed, look, it always boils down to this. You can really do anything you want in life until something goes wrong, and I tell people all the time, if you're gonna do it for money, now there's two sets of rules. There's recreational rules, those who don't fly for money, and then there's commercial rules, and they're listed on the website faa.gov /UAS. And I say, going from being a licensed pilot flying aircraft to just taking a test, the test is challenging. It's not a simple test. It requires quite a bit of studying. And then really, if you're a business person, if you own a house, if you own a business, if you have any assets, you have to have insurance. And your regular photography business general liability policy does not cover flying drones. In fact, I have a business policy with Taylor & Taylor in New York City for my commercial photography business. And if I wanted to get drone insurance through them, they go to the company that I go to, Transport Risk out in Colorado. Transport Risk is one of the places that insures drones. So it's tough. Like I said, buying a drone, I know I said it's another tool in my toolbox, but in a sense, it's not. It's not like buying, a Black Magic motion camera or something like that, or a steady cam. It's a whole other thing. Yeah, if you're gonna do it commercially, and I know a lot of people try and define, well, what is commercial? Well, if you're in business and you're making money, because like I said, you can do a lot of things, but if you get in an accident or someone gets hurt, are you properly insured? Do you have the rights, the right insurance, the right licensing? I asked my insurance agency once, I said, what if I do something really stupid, that I'm negligent about and crash? And she said, we'll cover you, but you just may not get insured again. So, I just say you have to really look into it and look on the FAA website. There might be some additional help there.
You have any ideas how much money it actually costs for that type of insurance?
Yeah, a policy with $1 million liability and no drone coverage, like no reimbursement if you crash your drone, just $1 million liability flying a drone is about anywhere between $900 to $1,200. And then if you add an additional drone, there it's not another $900 to $1,200. It's it's a little bit less, but every drone you add, it significantly goes up. So it's not cheap, because like I said, you put something in the air, you can kill somebody. So that's why.
Melissa, did you have a follow-up there?
No, I'm just going to leave it to the pros. It's not worth what I want to do. It's not worth license, and that insurance is more than I'm paying for my business insurance.
That's why I asked the
$1 million.
question.
I'll leave it to you to do the drone. I'll stick with my stills.
Thank God, Melissa. I thank God, because I have clients that are the same way. They're thinking, why am I paying this guy this money? And then they realize, they look into it and they're like, oh, it's really not that bad for what we pay,
Right.
him to do this,
Follow up to, you can do most things just once. I had a conversation. Yeah, I'm involved with a lot of flying, And I had a conversation yesterday with a buddy about, we were talking about bailout procedures. And I said, can you bail out supersonic? And he said, yeah, just once.
Yeah, one of the guys who was involved in Unmanned University was a B-1 bomber pilot, and he told me, he said, and I always take heed on this. He said, you know, no matter what plane you're flying, you're always thinking in the back of your head, where am I going to ditch this thing if something goes wrong? And when I put my drone up in the air, that thought, that's one of the things that go through my mind. All right, if something happens, where am I going to go? Where am I going to try and put it? You know, look, the reality is it's a wonderful new medium, and it gives us a perspective that in many cases we haven't seen before, because most stuff, people don't rent a crane. So either most traditional photography has been done from the ground or from several hundred feet up in the air. The drone is this midway that is opening up all new horizons. But to do it right, to do it safe, it takes quite a bit.
Let me ask, when drones first came out and they showcased them at the Javits show, you know, the yearly thing, I remember that they were putting in regular DSLRs.
Yes.
Do they still have those kind of drones?
Yeah, but they're not as popular because the connection, like the integrated camera to the drone, the control that you have, the stuff that you can, some of those drones that you're talking about, you'd go up and you'd say, oh shit, I'm on F8. I need to be at 5.6, you know, and then you have to land the drone, change, you know what I mean? Some of the technology, especially the bigger drones that fly the red camera and stuff, obviously they're not integrated. They're flying cinematography. They have stuff that might be able to have a little more flexibility. I know those drones, part of the reason why they're so expensive is they got triple everything. They have 3 different signals. So if you lose a signal, you have 2 others. They have triple backup of everything on them. If you lose a propeller, you have several other motors that can land that drone.
Yeah, but if you have the money to buy a red, you should have the money to invest in those bigger drones. But how big are the sensors in the drones that you're using?
1 inch. 1 inch are the ones I'm using.
Okay, and, but are they how many megs?
About, I forget, maybe 40, 36 maybe.
Oh,
they're pretty good size. but remember this. I mean, I keep discovering this. We have so much post-production stuff now that if you get a decent capture, you can use post-production plugins to boost the file. I did a job inside a place that was so dark, and I used this plugin for denoising. Oh my God, it blew me away how good it was. So sometimes it's not, I mean, you want to start with the best camera you can use, don't get me wrong, but there's so much post stuff now that can really help.
Cool. I think most of the cameras are about 20 meg for the DJIs and a 1 inch sensor, as Joe says.
Yeah. I was
which is pretty respectable. When you think what we started with in digital, you know, some of those early Kodak cameras, you know, with a couple of megapixels or even less, or 6 was my first digital camera. They're way beyond that.
Yeah. And like I said, I did a job for a chemical company where I printed a shot I did of the company, of the plant in 4 feet by 7 feet on metal. And that's another reason why I went with the Phantom 4, because I was worried about the quality, because it flies, oh my God, it flies so stable. It's so, you know, the thing is, the respect I have for people are those guys that flew cameras on remote control helicopters. Those suckers were hard to fly. The early drones were remote control helicopters, and those things were so damn hard to fly. Now these drones with GPS, you let go of the sticks and it sits there. It just sits there, right there in the sky. It's you know, the technology is accelerating like you wouldn't believe.
What did you have to do to get that image 4 feet by 7 feet? Did they raster it up?
Yeah, I boosted it once I got a good capture. Once I got it the way I looked, I'm looking to buy Jack recommended a company to me the other day that I'm looking at. They have a Topaz. They look like they have some pretty good boosting
Topaz
software.
Gigapixel.
They're excellent.
Yeah, I want to buy that because I have a way that I learned from, I think I learned from Katrine Eisman in one of her Photoshop seminars.
Didn't we
on
all?
boosting. Yeah. God bless Katrine. She's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Topaz stuff is very good.
Yeah.
It was a great TA.
Yeah.
And I think they have a video dedicated version of some of their plugins.
They do.
Yes. So that's my next thing.
Yeah, they're about 4 miles from where I'm sitting right now.
Can you buy direct?
Awesome.
Can you buy direct from them, Steve?
Yes, you can.
I mean, you can walk down if you're able to walk 4 miles.
Well, it's software.
What
Can
from your seat in your office?
wait a minute? No, do they have a store?
No,
Or
no, they have
okay.
they have a development office. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Suppose
They have maybe a dozen software developers working in an office.
Any other questions for Joe before we let him go here?
Yeah, Joe, how long you been living in Morristown?
Oh God, 30 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
I grew up near there, and I never knew there was all those lakes.
Oh, yeah.
There's-
You know,
I live in,
the
yeah,
largest,
Denville has 5 lakes.
well, you know what the largest man-made lake is up there?
No, which one?
Lake Apacon.
You know, Lake Apacon, it's man-made.
Yep.
When I was in flight school and I was practicing my solo cross country, we flew over Lake Apacon, and it's interesting. Lake Apacon's so big that you lose altitude flying over it because the air is colder. And I'm dropping, and I said to my flight instructor, I go, "We're dropping," and he goes, "Yeah, the air is colder, and you know, you have to adjust to gain altitude again." We dropped 1,000 feet flying over Lake Apacon. It was
I
amazing.
remember Bertram Island.
Oh, yeah. No, my
Oh,
grandfather
amusement
used
park.
to own the pharmacy and landing.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have
Super.
one question.
Yeah, Harris.
Yes.
So when you look at everything in totality, Joe, is this a good time for somebody to get into, working with drones, or as a form of income, or do you think it's kind of, you've missed your slot?
No, I think it's still a good time, but I will tell you that like a lot of people say that it takes, a lot of people say it takes about 5 years to start a business, and on average, and it took me, I would say at least 3.5 years before I started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that this was going to work. And I always remind people that this is an emerging technology and it's changing constantly. And the way I started and the way you may start is going to be different. It's, I got a call the other day from a guy who wanted to know if I could do agriculture stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Western New Jersey. There's a lot of farms. And I told him, I said, I would be open to do it, but I need a contract because you have to invest 20 to 30,000 in equipment, LiDAR, and stuff like that. I think it's going to continue to grow. Where it grows and what sectors, I started doing a lot of drone mapping because there was a couple of engineering firms that were hiring me. But then what happened was a lot of them started doing it themselves, and I would get so few mapping jobs that it wasn't worth it because they weren't paying as much. And every time I get a mapping job, I'd have to like re-educate myself on how to do it. And I was like, oh my God, this is too tedious. So I think it's going to continue to grow,
Okay.
So I just
Thank you.
looked on
By the way,
the,
I just want to say thank you. I thought this was a fantastic presentation, and I really learned a
Oh,
lot.
thank you
I
for the
had-
feedback. You're
I
very
had
welcome.
only one other quick question. I missed the cost you mentioned a couple minutes ago, the cost of your drone insurance.
All right. So now my drones are about 800 a piece. That's what I pay. Now, I don't know what other people's premiums are, but I know when I first got insurance, my premiums were less because I had been in flight school and I had a certificate that I got from Unmanned University that that I had taken a drone course. I love these guys at Unmanned University. They're great, but I had taken a drone course, and that helped my insurance rate. They knocked a few $100s off. Now, when I first started, it was like 1,200, but now it's been less. I think I'm paying 800 per drone.
Per drone,
Yeah.
not just one set fee like you do with traditional photographers.
No, and this may sound silly, but I just called my insurance agent this morning because I'm considering where I'm going this spring and buying another drone. And because things change every 6 months to a year in this business, I asked her, I said, is the insurance still the same? If I buy another drone, even though I'm the only operator and I'm not going to have 2 drones out there flying at once, I have 3 drones. I have 2 that I bring on every job in case I have a mechanical problem or whatever, just like you have 2 cameras when you go on a job. And I said, is it different now? I'm the only operator. She goes, no, it's still the same. The drones are like automobiles. Every time you add an automobile, it's more money. And then there is software out there called Verifly. Is it Verifly? I think is one where it's an app where you can go out and you can buy insurance by the hour, right? But the problem with apps like that, and again, it could change, but based on my last knowledge that I knew of it, if you get a job with a big company where you're doing continual work, if they want a certificate of insurance, it makes it more difficult with those apps, whereas you pay as you fly.
And have you ever filed a claim in all this time?
No, thank God. A lot of preparation, a lot of I had an accident, about 30 hours of flying in, and when we talk about hours, that's in the air. It's not like getting to the job, setting up. It's when we talk about flight hours, it's how long the drone's in the air. And about 30 hours in, I had an accident, and again, it had to do with depth perception. I hit a flagpole, and I wasn't high enough, and I thought I was beyond it, and I went right into it. And I've had a lot of close calls, especially on windy days. But I could have an accident tomorrow. You never know. What the best way to avoid an accident is preparation and not flying beyond your skill, not letting clients talk you into doing something that's too risky. Because I've had clients ask me, why don't I do this, this, and this? And I have to tell them, listen, I just don't think it's worth it. And as it's, they just came out, they think that Kobe Bryant crash was pilot error, that he knew he shouldn't have flown, but he was flying a celebrity and he didn't want to let him down. And boy, that is the number one killer for pilots. They drill it into us in flight school. And don't fly beyond your ability. Don't fly beyond your ability. And don't, you have to learn how to say no. And that'll, accidents can happen to anybody. But
Sure, same
that'll
thing with
keep
Stevie
you-
Ray Vaughan.
Same thing with him.
Yeah.
And
Kept
Bill
flying out of a
Graham.
concert. What's that?
Bill Graham.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's called get there itis. What
So
they call
Ian,
in
did
flight
you have
school.
something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, so all is not lost for me for drones. I just looked at the DJI website and they have a drones for aerial spraying. There's no megapixels, but they have a 20-liter tank. So I think I can get into that.
Can you fill a tank with bourbon?
It has lots of opportunities. Spray paint, there could be lots of things here.
there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I'll tell you that.
Hey, Joe.
Maybe
Joe,
not wanting to skin the cat to begin with.
Joe, what's the technical for drones? What's the actual technical term for landing a drone? Is it the same as with a regular plane?
No, I don't think there's any technical term. It's just landing. And these drones, you can hit a button that it'll auto land. But I don't know if it's my age, but I am so skeptical of auto. One of the things I hated about drone mapping was it's all auto flying. It's flying an automated course. And boy, I hate when I don't have control over it. Even though because the technology is excellent and it does great stuff, but it also, it's technology.
So Michael, what is your term for landing?
Wait a minute, Ian, what's the technical term for a landing?
Not crashing.
It's a controlled crash. That's what it's called, a controlled crash.
Yeah, we've got a
Yeah,
few
well,
pilots in the audience. Daniel's the other one, right?
What?
Awesome.
Daniel's another pilot there. I don't know if he's paying attention or just doesn't want to say anything.
I got a question with, well, I was a question, but on the FAA, they don't really use the word drone. They use unmanned vehicle or something.
UAS?
Unmanned aircraft systems. There's UAS, UAV, but they do use the word drone because there's something called the drone zone. And let me get that website for you.
Now with a drone, doesn't that include like drone aircraft and not just with propellers and stuff like that?
Well, it's funny that you say that because part of the conversation I had with the person at the FAA today is she was telling me there's a whole other subset of drone operators, those who fly the really big military stuff. And they have a whole other set of rules and regulations. The drones that I'm talking about and that most people are, get into for photography and small commerce are under 55 pounds. And like there's a website called FAA dronezone.faa.gov. And that's where you can go to register your drone. You can go there to apply for an airspace authorization. There's something, I'm bummed out. They're getting rid of what's called a wide area authorization, where I could go into certain airspace and just fly. They're getting rid of it, and they're using they implemented years ago this thing called a Lance system, where you go in and you get instant authorization. I hate it because this software is, it's always, you know how it is. Anytime you deal with an internet connection or software, there's always problems. But
Can you paste that website into the chat?
yeah, what do I click the chat button?
Yeah.
And okay, got it. Yeah, let me do that. And I'll put it, that's direct. Why does my chat button send? Do I chat everyone in the meeting? There we
Yeah,
go.
just type, click in the type message here box and paste it in.
Okay. Got it. Here we go.
There we go.
There you go. And then the other website that I had mentioned.
UAS?
Yes.
I already
UAS.
put that one in the chat, but if you want to do
cool.
it again, you can.
Yeah, I'll do it one more time.
Yeah.
Just the hell of it. And so there's a ton of information. But if you're like me and this stuff gets confusing, if you call the FAA, let me give you a phone number because like I said, and they're really helpful people. Like I said, the people that work for the FAA, typically, my experience has been, is they're typically people that they like flying, and they're very helpful. And this is a number that I've called at the FAA. That this guy, the guy who usually answers it, his name is Gerald Hightower, and it's a UAS helpline. And he's a very nice guy. He's very helpful. He's also very honest. If he doesn't know the answer, for those of you guys who know about aviation, there's a ton of regulations, but there's also a ton of gray area. When I was in flight school, the regulation was you had to be, I don't know, I think 1,000 feet flying a plane in a populated area, 500 over a sparsely populated area. And I tell my flight instructor, well, how do I know what is sparsely populated and what is populated? He goes, no one knows. It's just like, and so there is some gray stuff that goes on.
If you see tall buildings with blinking red lights and green lights, they're in a very populated area.
And helicopters are supposed to stay 500 feet away from everything, but helicopters can come in at 100 feet, 200 feet off the ground, and helicopters are the big ones. You really got to watch, and you got to listen for them when you're flying.
Cool. Well, thank you, Joe. This has been really informative. I think people got a lot out of it.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. And
thank Jack Resnicki for suggesting.
Yeah.
And Jack's going to be back on in a couple of weeks, I think on the 18th, to talk about copyright.
Good. I hope to catch it because I always learn something from Jack.
Yeah.
We appreciate your time this morning, Joe. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Hey, Joe,
Thank you guys.
Joe, do you copyright all your stuff?
Yeah. It's gotten harder. It's gotten more difficult. And you know what I just did the other day? Interesting. My daughters told me about this because my kids are much more savvy on the web than I am. Google has an image search, and I started image searching my images, and I found some places that were using my images, and I'm not looking to go after anybody. I just told them it's unauthorized, and one person I struck up a nice relationship with, so you never know.
How did you look up the search? Just by your name?
No, you can plug in an image.
Yeah.
You can plug an image into Google and it'll look for that image on the web.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's very cool.
Cool.
I plugged in a photo of Mueller and my computer crashed, so I'm not sure.
There's also
Are you serious?
I have a habit of doing that.
The other reason why you don't want to fly too far away, because I've had the software crash on my drone, and then I got to reboot the software while the drone's in the air. So,
Well, I wanted to ask you a question, Joe. I've been losing communication fishing with my old DJI Phantom 4 at about 250 to 300 feet, and it just seems to have started in the last year. I'm wondering if the air is getting noisier, or if you've ever run into just loss of communication with the aircraft. I can still see it.
Yeah, typically what if you call DJI, what they'll do is they'll have you go through and reinstall everything and re-update all the software. Sometimes it's just as simple as a bug, right? The Phantoms have incredible connection. The Inspires, not so incredible, especially the old Inspire ones. They're like, it was hard to shoot video on them sometimes because the screen would go in and out. So I would first suggest reinstalling all your software and updating it. If you still have that problem, call DJI, because there could be a hardware issue going on inside that they need to look at.
Stephen,
It's a new issue. It hasn't happened until this last few months.
Stephen, how close
It's matting. Yeah.
Stephen, how close to an airport do you live?
Well, that particular one, I was flying in San Francisco. It's quite a ways from San Francisco Airport. I'm actually closer to San Francisco Airport where I live in Pacifica, and I haven't had the problem here, but I have had the problem in San Francisco.
Okay, I
wondering
know that the airports, the major airports, at least in the Northeast corridor, are now installing, I don't know what you call it, signals to block drones, because there's been too many drone strikes and too many near misses with drones. So they've installed software around the area to disengage all drone software.
Michael, the drone won't even let you fly in a restricted zone.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Drone software will not even let you fly in a restricted zone. It won't take off. It won't fly.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I wonder how close you are to any airport, including military.
Right, but Stephen can fly. It just loses connection.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what happens.
Mhm.
That's what happens. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Usually, no, typically it prevents you from launching. Typically
Right.
you're now there are other drone manufacturers that don't do that. A lot of people have been buying the Evo. Is it by Untitled Robotics, that has supposedly a really good camera in it, but it doesn't jam the software. Like one of the problems I have is I'll get permission from the FAA to fly in a certain area, and then I still have to do an unlock code with DJI, which is a real pain in the ass, because I'm a licensed pilot. I get permission from the FAA, and I still have to go through an unlock procedure with them, and it's arbitrary. Sometimes it's in the weirdest places that you wouldn't think. So
Yeah, but how do they know that you're a licensed pilot?
you have to put in, well, like you get permission from the FAA.
No, that I
gotta put
understand, but how does
Yeah, but
how does this
Well,
other
to-
place know that you're a licensed pilot?
well, the DJI software, you have to go through an unlock procedure, and typically you have to upload the waiver
Okay.
or the authorization that you get from the FAA for them to approve and say, okay, we can unlock it.
Hey guys,
And,
I have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay,
So
well, we'll see you on Thursday. Unfortunately, my guest for Thursday came down with COVID, is recovering, so we're going to have an open discussion, and I'll reschedule him later in the month.
why? But doesn't he have a computer by his bed?
I don't know. I think give him a little rest. So, thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Really
you.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you, John.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Very interesting. Very fun.
Thanks, guys.
Be well.
appreciate it.
Take care, Ian.
Thank you, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank you.